Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalists, in this case covering who dies when shit hits the fan. This is going to be a two video topic because this is more general in approach. The second part is going to be specifically about economic collapse, what it is that happens in those times, who it is that it's more vulnerable, and who's going to be dying when an economic collapse takes place, and what kills people after an economic collapse. This is going to be a more of a general thing, and it covers things like natural disasters, man-made disasters, things like what happened in Haiti with, with tsunamis, or what happened in Japan and that sort of thing. So it is a more of a broad approach. First of all, we're talking about old people. Old people, and this is possibly also linked to physically weaker people as well, because of obvious reasons. Old people are of course very vulnerable. If you're thinking of a natural disaster of any kind, if you're thinking of power outages, extended periods of time, old people just, they're not ready to cope with these sort of events as well as others. And again, so broad of a topic. If you're thinking of people old folks that need constant assistance to get by, and they're not getting any of that, even during an economic collapse, for example, which is what I saw myself. One of the things that I really remember is after 2001, when it all went down in Argentina. One day I was walking in the downtown center of Buenos Aires, and again, guys, this is something that I often mention, that when I say that life goes on, you may be going through a very difficult personal tragedy, and the world just does not stop because of that. We were having a full-blown economic collapse, and you would still walk down in the middle of the downtown district, everyone going about their business, showing up to their jobs and such. And I saw this old lady. She must have been like 80, 90 years old, something like that. Very well dressed. She kind of reminded a little bit of my grandmother. So it hit a nerve, and I saw that she was crying and clenching herself to a fence from a window, middle of downtown Buenos Aires. This old lady, very well dressed, so you knew she wasn't just like living on the streets or anything like that. She was well dressed. She had a little suitcase on her side, and she was crying desperately and holding herself in these bars, this window bars. And I asked her what was wrong with her, what had happened, and she told me that she had been evicted from her house. She had nowhere to go. Right that moment, she was on the streets for good. And I asked her, well, maybe you have family, someone I could help you, call someone. She said, no, I don't have anyone. I don't have anyone to help. I don't have family. I don't have anything at all. And they just kicked me out because I just couldn't pay rent anymore. Apparently, she had been living in one of these hotel rooms or something like that, or a room of some sort. She was there. She was going through very tough times like everyone else was. I really couldn't do anything for her. At that time, I was going through my own things. I was just getting married. I had my own problems to deal with. Maybe if today I had the opportunity, I could have done something for her. But back in that moment, I couldn't do anything. Just tap her on the shoulder, wish her the best of luck, and nothing, and just hope that God provided in some way. That sort of thing is just, man, it sucks so much. But it's the kind of thing you see when something like that happens. And again, if you're thinking of natural disasters of some sort, if there's going to be lack of medical supplies, again, and I always go back to the case of Argentina because it's such a good example. When right now there's problems with medications because they're not letting stuff being imported into the country. Now, if you're thinking of maybe a natural disaster that there's problems with supplies because of other reasons as well, again, old folks are going to be suffering, right? So old guys, they're especially vulnerable because of physical weakness, because they rely on modern medicine. If it hadn't been for that, if it hadn't been for modern medicine, maybe they would have died years ago. So when things start getting a bit more complicated, they are one of the first ones to go. And that quickly takes us to the following group: sick people that rely on constant medical assistance. Maybe they need a constant treatment because of dialysis, because of certain drugs that they'll need every single day to stay alive. Maybe they're hooked to a respirator. Of course, if you're hooked to a respirator and power goes down and it doesn't come back for some time, you are going to die, of course. That's pretty obvious on its own. And this happened clearly in Chile. In Chile with their earthquake, that they were without power for a very long time. Lots of people died in hospitals because of that. And it's understandable. You know, you need constant medical attention. And again, it covers the kind of thing you see in earthquakes, tsunamis, natural, man-made disasters, anything that interrupts the natural flow. Well, it's not the natural flow. I would say the artificial flow of supplies, of treatment and such. In those moments, you're pulled back to what would have happened to you on the real natural world, right? If you didn't have any of that help, so as to stay alive. And that's the type of thing that kills people. Moving on, again, some of the more physically weak people, we have children. One of the things we also saw, and this is one of the things that really struck a chord in the nerve of people when we started seeing kids die because of hunger in Argentina. And that was one of the things that really set the alarm off on many guys. You suddenly realize that that kids were starving to death in your country. And I was watching a program last week. It's from a guy, he's called Jorge Lanata. He's an Argentine journalist, and he's a guy that's always speaking the truth of what's going on over there. And just a couple of weeks ago, he did a report on the problem of hunger right now in Argentina. The amount of kids that are hungry and are suffering from malnutrition. He was explaining that during the first year of life of a child, that's when 80% of the brain is developed. All right, the amount of development you will have in your brain, it goes on, 80% of that goes on in the first year of life. So if during that first year of life you have not received the necessary calories and nutritional values so as to allow that proper development, you're going to be losing your intelligence. You're not going to be developing to your full potential. And that's something that has been going on in Argentina for many years now. So by now we already have a generation of people that because of that lack of proper nutrition, and these are the kids that managed to live. All right, we're not even talking about the ones that die because of hunger. And that's about, depending on who you ask, that's about 20 kids per day in Argentina right now. 20 kids per day die of hunger in different provinces, even in the suburbs of Buenos Aires that happens. Right? We see cases of, and this is thousands of cases of kids that are born already in malnutrition cases, in malnutrition physical shape, because the mother herself did not receive the necessary food. I was watching a report from, this may seem as if it has nothing to do with it, but I was watching about a report on a boxer, an Argentine boxer called Jorge Maravilla Martinez. I think he's the current middleweight champion or something like that. He's a very good boxer, and he was saying that in his childhood in Claypole in Buenos Aires, in his family, only his dad would eat well. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, well, that's kind of crappy. The dad eats well, and the kids, he would say that they just had a little bit of tea and a piece of old bread. That was what the kids would eat, and the father would be the one that would be eating better. And he later explained, right there, he explained that was because his dad was working all day long. All right, that little that they had to get by, that little food that they had to get by, was being provided by the father. Now, if the father didn't get enough food to do the work needed to go out and provide at least something for the family, they would just all not make it. So in his family, his dad had a bit of a better meal, and the kids had just a bit of bread and something else, a little bit of tea or something like that. And he mentioned when he started working, I think like when he was 12, 13 years old, the first day he went out to work, he came back home, and that day during that dinner he sat on the table and he also had a real meal, a real dinner, because he started providing for his family himself. So now that he was working like a man, he was eating like a man as well. You know, it sounds extremely cruel. You think, okay, the dad, the older kid eating, and the other ones eating less. You know, but that's basic stuff of survival. If you cannot have the one providing, if you don't have the one providing for the others in good enough shape, then all of them just don't make it. So, you know, one of those things that link poverty, economic collapse, poverty, and that sort of thing. When there's little resources for everyone, you know, one of the weaker people we have is children, and they are going to be suffering and not making it. When there's not enough food for everyone, children, you know, very vulnerable. Also, because of physical realities about them being weaker and such, if something bad happens, they're not able to run as much. They're not able to, you know, to go without food. I mean, if you have kids, I mean, I have my own kids, and whenever they were feeling sick, and if you're a father or a mother, you know this just as well as I do. Then it's nothing new for you. But when you have your kids, when you have a 5-6-year-old and he's feeling sick and he starts throwing up, or he has bowel problems with diarrhea, that sort of thing, they immediately lose weight. Right away, they start losing weight. And it's because of their small bodies, they lose weight very fast. Diarrhea, that sort of thing. Right? Who's here in the cover? A kid. Yeah, when you have diarrhea, cholera, that sort of thing, affecting a population, kids are going to be the first ones to die. Kids, older people, sick people. Moving on, physically weak people. If you are physically weak for one reason or another, you're also going to be in a worse condition. A good example of this, talking about various sorts of disasters and emergencies. What happened with that cruise in Greece that was sinking? That'll be starting with my little drawings already here. Well, when that cruise went down, they were actually pretty close to land. All right, maybe we had land over here. The cruise started to sink, and most of the people that made it, I think that, don't want to say anything that isn't true, but I think it was about 20 people that died in this cruise ship that sunk. The captain it was something that was a human error, I believe, but most of the people that actually survived, which was most of the folks there, many of them just jumped into the water and went swimming to the coast. You know, just saving themselves, saving their own lives. We are thinking of disasters where you run away from problems, from trouble, like something that I've made reference to in the past. You run away from problems. You run away from, if there's shootings, if they start shooting people, there's shelling in a city that's being bombed during wartime. You run away from problems. Now, if you're not able to run, then you're in a serious disadvantage. You're physically weak for one reason or another. If you have overweight problems, okay, if you have 100 extra pounds of weight or whatever, and you're not able to run if you have to do so, you're not going to be making it. In this case, if you were not able to swim, maybe you wouldn't be telling the story, right? If you are incapable of swimming or running, that's the kind of thing that may also kill you. One other thing, during robberies, one of the things that we've noticed is that during violent robberies, especially old people and sick people, it's very common for them to suffer heart attacks because of the emotional stress. That's the kind of thing that can kill you just as well. Lots of cases of people dying of heart attacks during robberies, right? Lots of people dying because they just cannot cope with it. And we are talking now about emotional weakness, right? Basic survival stuff for all sort of disasters. One of the things that kills people the most is the lack of will to live anymore. If an airplane goes down, what happened with the rugby players in the border between Argentina and Chile? That there's a famous movie, a live movie, where the rugby team, they end up eating the dead and all that sort of stuff. That's the kind of situation where if you lose the will to live, you just die. The body just gives up. If the mind gives up, the body gives up right away. So emotionally weakness. And if we're talking about stressful moments, right now in most countries, people are being seriously stressed because of the economic problems. How are you able to handle that stress? Is it that stress causing your blood pressure to go through the roof? Your cholesterol level is disastrous as well. That stress is killing you just as well. You know, it's not as dramatic as some of the other stuff we've been talking about, but it's still taking lives. The emotional weakness that you will have, or the emotional weakness that you have, is something that may claim your life one day, right? So you have to be both physically strong, and most of all, I'd say even more than physically strong, you have to be emotionally strong. Extremely important for everything in life. Right now we're talking a little bit about life philosophy in general, but it's very real. Not talking about anything that isn't. It's very real that if you don't have the emotional stamina, if you don't have the willpower, right, the will to stay alive, then you're not going to be making during a disaster of any nature, We've had people that take their own lives because they cannot cope with this kind of stuff, right? You lose your job 6 months, 12 months, there's nothing there, and here's where there's something of again, some of the things that I've mentioned in previous videos. If you are the type of doom and gloom kind of guy, if you're the type of doom and gloom type of that guy, and something actually bad really happens, something serious happens for real, you are not in a position to tolerate that. You're not emotionally strong enough. If during good times you're already going nuts over fantasies that you build up on your own, if you cannot appreciate the good stuff you have going on, you know, then you're already standing on weak ground for anything more serious. Right? So maybe you think you're a survivalist, you're a prepper, whatever it is you would like to define yourself like, but you lack that willpower to get by during adverse conditions. That's the type of thing that kills you as well, right there, right? People jumping in front of the trains, man. I've talked about that. I've experienced that on so often that it actually bugged me. When people did that exactly at 7 a.m., maybe in a last desperate attempt to get themselves noticed by society in some way, you know, I would be taking my train to my job downtown. They would be saying, "Well, we have this delay because someone jumped. There was an accident." They never say that people kill themselves. They talk about there's been an accident, or there's technical inconveniences, or there's technical problems, and you know it always happens at 7:30 a.m., 8 a.m. when you have to go to a job, and I don't know why, but mostly the guys that kill themselves, they choose those time of the day maybe as a last desperate attempt to, at least when they die, be noticed in some way. Emotional and physical weakness is the type of thing that does claim lives during disasters and emergencies. People with less skills, and here is where we start talking about folks that have no training for survival and emergencies. If you don't have, maybe you're caught in some disaster of larger magnitude, but you have some knowledge. You have been researching and studying what you should be doing in those cases. Lack of knowledge and lack of information can kill you as well, right? Maybe you know how to purify water, and you're not getting infected with cholera and affected by diarrhea and that sort of thing because you've managed to acquire some knowledge. If you are in a robbery, or if you're living in dangerous circumstances, and you have the skills to keep yourself and your family safer and such, then those are the type of skills that save your life as well. Talking about more broad stuff and things about of current events as of right now, if you have the skill so as to provide your own income during these times, or if you have the skills so as to be of value to other people that have businesses of their own, if you are a valuable employee, someone that adds value to the company in some way, And maybe, one of the things that I've noticed during the worst of the crisis, if you had good marketing skills, if you were a good salesman, you had a job. And I can tell you one thing, that's the kind of skill that ensures that you have a job anywhere. Good at marketing, good at getting stuff sold, good at getting the wheels turning during economic recessions. Man, that is a huge skill that you have up there. Forget about starting fires with twigs or with a bow drill. That's very nice for bushcraft stuff. And in the rare case of you being stranded in the middle of the Amazons, how often does that happen? Well, not very often. That's a valuable skill right there. If you're stranded in your little desert island or whatever, maybe watching too much Man vs. Wild or whatever, a true survival skill today in the modern world, right now, being a good salesman, that's a good skill. Being good at closing business, at starting business, at being good at making money. Being good at making money or making money for other people, huge survival skill, right? Moving forward, people with less resources. And sometimes this is strongly linked to the skills you have, right? And about this, we're talking about people that are lower in the social pyramid. People that are in this sector, these guys, they usually have less skills, less resources. Maybe you do have skills at making money, but you were planning improperly. Maybe you're very good at making money, which, as I said before, is one of the best skills you could possibly have today, but you missed it in understanding that you need to acquire certain resources so as to be in a better position during some disasters, right? If you don't have food, if you don't have water, and there's a natural disaster of certain magnitude, which is closing that line of that line for you. You're not able to go to a supermarket anymore. You're just depending on what you have at home. You're locked down. You're stranded because, think about Katrina. If you were locked in your house because everything else is flooded and you cannot make it out of there, and you don't have anything to eat, of course, food, water, the stuff we always talk about, right? The resources that you don't have, this may end up killing you. This has and will continue to kill people during natural, man-made disasters of different kinds. And it's not only food, water. If you don't have financial resources, right? How often has this killed people, man? So often. If you don't have the financial resources to leave a place when you have to, all right? This is something that I post just today in the Modern Survivalist, themodernsurvivalist.com. A post that I made today about understanding when you have to leave a country, right? I was talking about your first ask to leave, then you are not allowed to leave anymore. Think of the Nazis in Germany. Think of the ethnic cleansing in many places, right? There's no religion, there's no ethnic group that has not been persecuted at one time or another in history, right? You're not safe from that happening. And there's really no guarantee that eventually sometime that may happen to you. So don't think that way. If you lack the resources, what I had to do myself when I left Argentina, because I considered that it was not life for us anymore, right? Maybe it wasn't as dramatic, right? But there's cases where it comes to a point where if you haven't left, then it's too late for you. And what allows you to do that, and again, we could go back and forth all day long if we're talking about disasters like what happened in Japan with a tsunami. If you don't have means to leave that place, you will be in a much worse position than someone that has maybe financial resources to start over somewhere else. If you lost everything that you have, you lost your home, you lost your farm, you lost your homestead, and you have to start over elsewhere, if you don't have those resources, then you're in a much worse position. Guys, I hope you enjoy these videos. I'm going to be doing the next one. It's going to be just about who dies during economic collapses. What kills you after an economic collapse, right? That's going to be, I think it's going to be quite interesting because it's more specific and goes into further detail and all this stuff. Guys, take care. Consider subscribing as well, somewhere the button over there. Take care and see you in our next video.